Have you ever walked away from an interaction with someone thinking, gosh, why didn't I do better with that? I should know better by now. Or did you ever feel much more angry or scared about something than you think you should? When you know in your rational mind that everything is most likely okay? This can be the work of the subconscious. Primal motivational neural pathways are hardwired in the human brain to keep us alive, drawing us towards what our brain instinctually sees as rewarding or safe, and away from what it determines is threatening. Neuroscience finds several areas of the brain that govern our social experiences are the same as those used for primary survival. And much of the motivation behind our social behavior is governed by a principle of minimizing threat and maximizing reward. Interestingly, most humans respond instinctively, similarly, regardless of our upbringing or our values or our knowledge or experience. The Neuroleadership Institute divides these instinctual motivational drivers into 5 categories. In my last 2 episodes, I talked about 2 of the categories. I got emails and DMs telling me how valuable they were and how meaningful they were in people's lives right now. So in this episode, I'm covering the final 3 motivational drivers as part of a 3-part series. This is Lucy Gable, author, speaker, and professor, leadership optimal performance coach and trainer. And this is Leadership, Life, Health, and Happiness. To know how your brain works is powerful because when you know what's happening behind the curtain, you can put things into perspective and react rationally. Our response can be much more powerful, and we are much more in control. Sometimes we're having a very strong reaction, whether it's drawing us toward someone or something or pushing us away. But we don't know it's one of those primitive drivers, so we treat it like it's real, like it's a real threat or something that we're really drawn towards. The more you know about these primitive drivers, the more you can free yourself from being strictly bound to your primal instincts and act more intelligently and intentionally. Essentially, being the person you want to be instead of the person you happen to be. And if you're in a leadership role, or even if you're not, sometimes you just want to put people more at ease when they're around you. You want to avoid misunderstandings. You want to avoid accidentally demotivating people when you really want to motivate them, which happens all the time, by the way. If you want to assist people in bringing out their best thinking, decision-making, and creativity, this is a topic you'll benefit from learning about. If you have a company or manage one, you should know that these are things that create highly engaged teams, reduce conflicts, and increase the amount of time that people spend in the motivated and safe state of mind, which is highly related to good performance. According to Gallup, it can lead to 18% higher productivity, 23% higher profitability, 21% less turnover, and 78% lower absenteeism. The Neuroleadership Institute categorized these primal motivational drivers nicely into an acronym that spells SCARF. The first 2 I covered were status and certainty. Can you guess what the last 3 letters stand for? The third motivational driver is autonomy. And that's the perception of having control over your environment and a sense of having choices. If you're feeling frustrated at work or elsewhere, it could be because you feel you don't have a sense of autonomy. You aren't having enough control over your life in that situation. Autonomy is so important. People will leave you, they'll leave their job, they'll leave their corporate life, often for far less income and less comfort because they want more autonomy. If you're in a leadership role, Giving people a sense of autonomy results in a reward response from others. That means they will not only feel better working with you and for you, but they'll also do better work. They'll be more productive. They'll be better collaborators, better decision makers and problem solvers, and they'll want to do more work. So to give people more autonomy, instead of telling them what to do, you can give them some choices. Ask them how they'd suggest getting a job done. If you have more knowledge than them, and if they need more help, you can guide them to making the best choice, starting with their own ideas as a jumping off point. This is part of what coaching is, by the way. Coaching has proven to be a better way to help people learn rather than simply telling them what to do. Autonomy works in personal relationships too. Have you ever heard of the phrase, if you love someone, set them free? If they come back, they're yours. If they don't, they never were. It's so true. People need to feel that they have autonomy in relationships in order to be able to fully commit to a relationship. This can be a really hard concept to grasp at first. The best thing to focus on, though, is that the right people will be drawn to you without you having to exert any control. And those will always be the right relationships. Another thing that goes under the autonomy heading is avoiding micromanaging. People need to know that they can rely on their own hard-earned knowledge and experience to get them to their goals. It fosters confidence and resilience. It gives them a sense of meaning and satisfaction and status, which is another primal motivational driver. They also need to know that you believe in their knowledge and experience and ability to get things done. People need to know that their gifts and skills are seen and what they have to offer is valued and worthwhile. This pertains to relationships at work, but also personal, family, and especially if you have growing kids. A sense of autonomy not only helps people think better and work better, but several studies found strong correlations between people's health and a sense of control over their own life. Primitive motivational driver number 4. Relatedness is the R in the acronym SCARF. It means a sense of safety with others. Our brains quickly and subconsciously determine whether someone is a friend or a foe, part of our tribe or a dangerous outsider. This ancient protective mechanism helped us decide who to trust in order to survive long ago when we were in tribal communities. The concept of relatedness is closely linked to trust. We find it easier to trust people who appear to be in our group, who we have some sort of connection with. It's hardwired in our brain. When people see something in you that they can relate to, they feel a connection. Research shows that this sense of relatedness is linked to the release of oxytocin, which is a hormone associated with trust and safety and even love. And this is very interesting. Different brain circuitry is activated when you feel related to someone or not. When you're getting information from someone you perceive as like yourself, it's processed using similar circuits in the brain as thinking your own thoughts. When someone is perceived as unlike you, different circuits in the brain are used. The need for safe human contact is like the need for food. I gave the example in episode 36 about how in primitive times we relied heavily on the closeness of our tribes for survival. For a long time in human history, encountering strangers meant a threat to our lives. So there's a natural threat response and a natural distrust for people that we feel are unlike us. How do we reduce the threat in the brain that people get from lack of relatedness? I mean, with the globalization of the world today, as well as political stress, political division, the importance of this primitive relatedness driver is so much more amplified. And when the threat response is activated, it can make collaboration between people from different cultures or backgrounds or even political parties much more difficult. When you want to bring people together to collaborate or be on the same team or work well together, be open-minded to what each other has to say, if you want to reduce any threat of lack of relatedness, it's important that you highlight the similarities up front. Make them clear and make them central to your conversation. This doesn't matter if you're just talking to someone else and you want to reduce the lack of relatedness threat, or if you're trying to work with a group and have them all become familiar with each other and reduce that threat. Think about what you have in common. What do you know and agree on as a group? What are your common goals, your common values, your common desires? Establishing a sense of relatedness is especially important if you're going into a discussion that you know could be difficult or emotional or could evoke someone's anger. Showing people the relatedness that you have can work absolute wonders. Because remember what I said in episode 36, when the brain senses safety, not threat, in these 5 areas, we have better conversations. We're more open. We're more creative and innovative. We're more kind, patient, and empathetic. It's just because the brain is in a much better state to be able to be all these higher level self things. Because I've been in the health industry all of my life, I had discussions with people on all sides of the political and medical fences during the pandemic. In fact, I purposely dove into conversations when many people would run away. Establishing a sense of relatedness first and reminding people of our relatedness throughout helped create smoother conversations where everyone felt safe enough to contribute and be honest about their thoughts. I'm using these concepts even today that enable me to speak with people across the political landscape. No matter what side people are on, there are so many ways to come to the table and create beneficial conversations. I keep all of these emotional drivers top of mind and use many suggestions I gave you on these last 3 episodes. If you're using these concepts, there will be success. So now we're on to the 5th and final primitive motivational driver. Fairness. And that means a perception of fair exchanges between people. Unfair exchanges generate a strong threat response in the brain. And it activates areas like the insular, which is a part of the brain involved in intense emotions like disgust. People will fight against the wrongdoing of unfairness. For example, look at all the political struggles through history. fMRI studies show when people think of someone else as unfair, they won't feel empathy for their pain. And in some instances, they can feel reward when unfair others are punished. According to several studies, a preference for fairness is evident across cultures, even in children, and even monkeys compare payoffs with peers and react negatively when a peer is rewarded more for the same effort. Fair treatment and cooperation is more likely to increase intrinsic motivation than money is. And we know that intrinsic motivation is a much stronger motivation than anything because it comes from within. And it predicts job performance and job satisfaction better than things like money or something else that's tangible. How do we reduce the threat response from perceived unfairness. I was talking to a colleague last week about how unfair her boss often seems to be. But she also said that she knew deep down that the problem might simply be the fact that she doesn't really know what's going on. So she interprets it as being unfair. She's smart to notice that. Most people won't. Because usually, if someone doesn't know what's happening, especially if they only see one side of the whole picture, you're leaving them to their own interpretations, which very often won't be positive on you, especially if you're the leader. So the perceived unfairness and the threat that comes from that can be decreased by increasing your transparency. When you're open with someone about what's really going on, it's less likely that they'll misunderstand and think you're being unfair. There are so many benefits to being honest and transparent. This is just one of them. And of course, I know if you're in a leadership role, there are times when it can be really hard to be transparent, even scary. But it's always far better than consequences that happen later if you aren't. I've seen it myself. I've experienced it. I've worked with many others who have. So prevent that unfortunate kind of situation by being as transparent and as communicative as you can. Another way you can avoid the threat response from perceived unfairness is giving people clear expectations before they get into a situation so they don't misclassify something as unfair later. One more great way to avoid accidentally being perceived as unfair is to allow teams to make their own rules as much as possible. Brendan Burchard from the High Performance Institute says, people always support what they create. And that's true, right? When you have a hand in creating something, you absolutely are much more supportive of it. So now I'm going to close on this trilogy with an excerpt from the Neuroleadership Institute article on these drivers that was published in 2009. Many new leaders may negatively impact these motivational drivers by accident. They may know how things should be done and provide too much direction and not enough positive feedback, thereby affecting people's status. They often don't provide clear expectations, which impacts certainty. They micromanage, impacting autonomy. They want to maintain a professional distance, impacting relatedness. And they may impact fairness by not being transparent enough. When the opposite happens, though, and you meet someone who makes you feel better about yourself, someone who provides clear expectations, lets you make decisions, trusts you, and is fair, you will most likely work harder for them as you feel intrinsically rewarded by the relationship itself. Spending time around a leader like this activates an approach response and opens up people's thinking, allowing others to see information that they wouldn't see in an avoid state or a stressful threat state. Techniques for motivating and rewarding staff are largely based on the carrot and stick principle, with the carrot mostly involving money or a promotion. By understanding these 5 primitive, mental, motivational drivers, you could find creative ways of motivating that may not just be less expensive, but also stronger and more sustainable. These are things that create highly engaged teams, which is highly related to good performance. Developing personal strategies to use these insights can help you become a better leader, better manager, coach, teacher, parent, friend, and spouse. If you like this episode, click like or give it 5 stars. Let me know what it inspired you to do, if anything. And if you'd like to download a bullet list of these drivers, something that you can look back on and remind yourself, let me know with a DM to one of my social platforms or contact me through my website, lucygable.com/contact. I'll talk to you next time.